Good morning, everyone. Don't you think in the middle of an emergency like this pandemic, this global pandemic, wouldn't you expect more governance necessary? More time spent governing, more time spent arguing, more time figuring out the best way, more time looking at the numbers and saying this is what the hospitals look like, this is the capacity, this is what we've got. What can we do more? Right? How can we expedite this process rather than relying on a guy who's in his cottage and a couple of virtual meetings a week? Right? And one in-person meeting with a reduced cabinet. Wouldn't you expect that? Regardless, our cabinet has been, and our House of Commons and Parliament has been suspended, and it's set to resume on May 25th. The Conservatives want it to resume as normal, and the Liberals do not want it to resume as normal. And it looks like the Liberals are using their minority to speak with other parties, such as the Bloc Québécois and the Greens and NDP, to see if they can continue the current setup. Because, and I have to say, the CPC is and has consistently been terrible at using the bully pulpit or using shaming in the press or anything. They're asking permission. It's so odd. It's so weird. They're very ineffective in their communication strategy, in my opinion. And I'm a small YouTube channel. Maybe I'm not the right person to comment on this, but when you're continually asking permission, when you're continually saying, please, we should hold these people accountable. Can we please hold these people accountable? Let's hold the people accountable. Let's hold these guys accountable. Can we not hold these guys accountable? That line just fails after like 3 times. You have to make your case and prove it and then shove it down people's throats and win. And there's none of that. Like, they're not even making an argument. They're asking permission. It's just frustrating. Anyway, here's CP24 reporting on Scheer wants full parliament to resume after May 25th. And I mean, the slant on the news is problematic as well. Like, they don't even really get to what Scheer said. Regardless, here it is. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer is renewing his call for parliament to find a new normal that looks like more like the old normal. This new normal is garbage. This is training. Not good. When you see that, that's a signal that you're reading some propaganda. Okay, back to this. The opposition chief said as the country begins a slow recovery from COVID-19, it's more essential than ever for the Liberal government to be held accountable. Quote, elected members of parliament come here to be a voice for their constituents to hold this government to account, and that needs to resume on May 25th, he said Friday. Parliament is adjourned until May 25th through a modified version is still meeting through a special committee focused on COVID-19. It gathers on a video conference twice a week and once in person, an approach that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Friday could be a good option. I scroll down, quote, we've proposed to continue that, and I know that there will be discussions with the other parties on the best way to move forward, he said. We all agree we need to continue with a strong democracy and a functioning parliament in a way that ensures that concerns of Canadians from every part of the country get heard. Scroll down. Another committee has been studying how to transition parliament to an entirely virtual operation. Scheer said that approach is not sufficient. Quote, we've always said that virtual sittings can be used to facilitate members who may not be able to come to Ottawa, but it certainly is no replacement, he said. Mr. Trudeau should not be using a health pandemic to avoid accountability and oversight and should not be eliminating the role of the people's representatives. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I agree. I just wish they had better messaging. I wish all opposition parties had better messaging just to get their ideas out and the messiness out of the way. But it's like they don't communicate well. And even worse, if they ask a good question, and Pierre Poilievre is a good example of this. He asks good questions. He communicates well, I think. If they ask a good question, the Liberals don't answer, or the opposition doesn't answer, or they resort to barbs and other debate tactics to just not answer, right? It's talking points, always talking points in the House of Commons, never an answer, right? Yesterday I showed 3 minutes of Pierre Poilievre asking what the government of Canada's debt was, and they didn't even pretend. So how do you do an end run around that? Because the only way to do an end run around that is you use that, you say, look, they're not answering questions, and then you tell people what you think and how you think we can manage this better. And then you keep telling people, right? And you have to go directly to the people at this point in time, because the media is going to insert 4 paragraphs about other things when the article was supposed to be Scheer wants Parliament to resume after May 25th, right? And I mean, the article could have helped make his case. The article could have allowed him to make his case, but they didn't, and they're not going to, right? And that's the point, right? So in addition to the Liberals not answering questions, the media is holding water by distracting with the article and not giving platform to a legitimate question. We should be holding these people accountable. The mechanisms are in place to hold them accountable in the House of Commons at a non-virtual sitting. We should be doing this. In a crisis, in an emergency, wouldn't you expect people to need to work more, right? Need to govern more, need to get in there and do their jobs and make sure that, all the widgets are where they need to be. You put things, all the stuff in place where they need to go. But instead, we got the guy in the cottage, right? And then we can't even talk about the real numbers. Numbers. What do you mean numbers? Okay, so here's a tweet I came across, and I wanted to vet it. I was like, I got to look into this. I think I put it on Canada Report as I need to look into this. And it says, it's all lies. Check out the Canadian health statistics. Here are 18 years representing cause of death. 2018, the worst year for flu in Canada, is still 3,000 people more than the deaths from COVID-19 outbreak. Okay, so here's a chart. And I thought, well, where did you get that chart? And so I found where they got that chart. Here it is. 150statscan.gc.ca. Links in the description. And you can create your tables any way you'd like. But this is cause of death. Okay, so this is the rank of leading cause of death. So malignant neoplasms, that's cancer, as far as I understand it. That's 62,000 people died of cancer in the year 2000. I was going to say 1971. I don't know why. Anyway, and in 2018, 79,000 people, roughly 79,536 people died of cancer. That's the number one leading cause of death in Canada. Okay, and when you get down to accidents, unintentional injuries, that's 8,000 people in the year 2000 and 13,000 people in 2018. And we're roughly 3,000 people for self-harm or suicide. Homicide is 300 people, right? So what does that mean? What's the context? I wanted to give you, these are 2013 numbers, but I wanted to give you an idea of the numbers here. 4,000 deaths, and the percentage of the total of 252,000 deaths in the year 2013. That's the total number of deaths. Okay, so 4,000 deaths represents about 1.6% of the deaths. And now let's just have a quick look at the COVID deaths in Canada. There it is, 5,499 deaths. I mean, it hasn't been a year. That's fair, right? Those are not total numbers, but the curve is lessening. Ezra Levent put out a tweet this morning talking about the curve lessening. I just think it's interesting when we're talking about less than 5%, and we shut down the economy. We have causes of death that far eclipse COVID-19, right? Alzheimer's disease in the year 2013 is more deaths than COVID-19. Chronic lower respiratory disease, a lot more deaths, more than double in 2013. And I mean, we can compare 2018 if you'd prefer. But number 4, chronic lower respiratory, 12,000 people. 12,000, a lot more, 2,000 more than 2013, right? So it's interesting that we shut down the economy for this, and that's the point, right? Like, the deaths are a tragedy. I think that Canada could have managed this better, and that lies directly at Justin Trudeau's feet. That's his fault. It's not anybody else's fault. It's Justin Trudeau's fault for Miss Tam and Miss Haydu and the whole gong show at the top there. They didn't do anything in the airports. They still haven't done really anything at the airports. We're still landing international flights. I mean, why shut down the economy? Oh, right. Got to get everybody dependent. It's very, very interesting, right? Here's a National Post article talking about business and health leaders accuse Justin Trudeau of shifting the goalposts for reopening the economy. In March, it seemed like it was going to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? And now we're like 2 months later, and they're like, no, maybe September, maybe next year we'll get back to normal. It's crazy, especially when you consider the number of deaths, right? We don't shut the economy down for flu, right? The flu in 2018 killed 3,511 more people. If you round down to 5,000, which I just did. So, I mean, does this seem like an insane response to you? And then an even more insane response to double down once we have the information that we have? We can protect people in long-term care homes. We can institute reasonable reasonable measures to help protect those people with regards to visitations and all of that other stuff. We could do a lot with an open economy, but it doesn't seem like this leadership team and this Liberal government wants us to. And they're going to do everything they can, including working with the other parties to continue to govern virtually, right? Right? It seems like they don't want anything to change. Right? Are you quite happy with your business shutdown? Are you quite happy with giving all of your money to all of the big box stores, which have been deemed essential, but your store is not essential? Is that okay? Right? Customers need to park in front of your store and pick up by curbside. They can't come in, but they can go into the big box stores. Really? Really? This is okay with a lot of people? It seems just crazy. Okay. The article. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been shifting the goalposts and justifying the lockdowns over COVID-19. While portraying as selfish any hopes to reopen an increasingly damaged economy, a coalition of health experts and business executives say. I'm selfish, apparently. The Macdonald Laurier Institute released the letter dated May 14th and co-signed by several business and health leaders, which said the Liberal government has presented social distancing measures as a stark choice: either selflessly shut down the economy to save lives, or selfishly worry about the economy and condemn thousands to a vicious illness. But that approach oversimplifies the decision facing governments and is being pursued at an almost incalculably large cost to the well-being of Canadians, according to the letter, which was co-signed by 24 health professionals and business executives. The letter comes amid some debate about the severity and length of economic shutdowns across Canada, which have shuttered the majority of businesses, put millions of people out of work, and obliterated corporate and government balance sheets. Okay, I just want to ask a quick question here. What's more impactful? And I asked this on Twitter this morning. I read it somewhere. I can't remember exactly where I read it, but I read it paraphrased. So this isn't exactly my idea. It was in my head and I woke up with it and I was like, man, but which one's more impactful? The economic lockdown because of COVID-19 or COVID-19 itself? And there's an easy way to find out. Do this quick test. How many people do you know directly that have died because of COVID-19? Or, like your friend's mom or your friend's grandmother or something like that. That counts, right? So that's a direct link to you, I think. How many people, right? One or two, maybe, right? You might know somebody and that's awful. That's a tragedy. Now, how many people do you know who have lost a job or been impacted by the lockdown, right? Had their business shuttered, had their restaurant shut, had their job either laid off or been fired. Now, is that the same as a death? I don't think so necessarily, but at the same time, the economic impact could be much greater, right? And I don't know how to weigh that. Right? Does one death equal 3 jobs, or how do you normalize that? And over what period of time? Right? We're at an unprecedented situation where we're spending about the yearly cost of governing, right? $300 billion plus on this response to give money to mostly low-wage workers who have lost their job due to this pandemic. And again, I point to the numbers. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to do this? Does it make sense to continue this farce? Because it seems like a farce, right? We don't shut the economy down for heart disease. We don't shut the economy down for cancer. And yet, 5,000 deaths, 30,000 infections is enough? Is it proven that this is going to explode again, or is this it, right? And when they say, second wave, have we seen evidence of that anywhere else? Anywhere else? Is Wuhan experiencing a resurgence? I haven't seen the big numbers. I haven't seen the big headlines about Wuhan's second wave, right? And I mean, how long has it been? It's been a while, right? Right? Seems crazy, doesn't it? Back to this. The letter comes amid some debate. I read that part. While some form of lockdown is widely believed to be a necessary measure in response to COVID-19, some people are questioning whether more limited shutdowns could have been equally as effective in keeping the healthcare system from being overwhelmed. It's becoming clearer and clearer that the fear we experienced at the beginning when we knew so little about the virus is exaggerated, said Brian Lee Crowley, managing director of MLI. We can rein that back now. Oh, can we? Thanks. Provincial governments are responsible for lifting economic restrictions, which were enforced under provincial emergency orders. But in an interview, Crowley said the tone in Ottawa has been conflicting with its provincial counterparts, which threatens to slow any effort to return the economy to full capacity. What's happening now is they're convincing people to continue being afraid when what we need is a message of reassurance and confidence from the government. He said they're contributing to an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that is completely unhelpful as we try to move toward a more measured response to the virus. I scroll down. Further complicating the issue, the letter said, thresholds for a return to normal continue to shift. Ottawa has declined to endorse the reopening of the economy, even as hospitals remain well below capacity, the metric that was initially used to justify the restrictions. Quote, the rationale for the lockdown seems to have morphed subtly from managing the outbreak by flattening the curve to preventing the illness from infecting Canadians at all, pushing the timeline for a return to some economic activity into the summer and a return to normal a year or more in the distance, the letter said. Dr. Neil Rowe, an infectious disease specialist and medical microbiologist in Oakville, Ontario, said there is a growing chorus of medical professionals beginning to question the strict lockdowns that have carried on for months. Quote, more people are taking the view that this risk-benefit calculation here, where you avert the risk of transmission in return for suppressing the economy, that it's not a worthwhile sacrifice, said Rowe, who was not a signatory to the letter. Part of the challenge facing governments, he said, is the blistering success with which people initially adhered to the lockdowns. Interesting. This part's interesting. We spooked people so well into staying home to avoid social contacting that it's extremely difficult now to reverse that message. Now, I've heard that people are ignoring this. People are out on beaches, like in Canada in March and April. Right, sure. And, maybe they're walking the boardwalks on the beaches. But, I mean, in this, they're saying we were so good at convincing people to stay home. We don't know if we can back that up now. And here is May 15th. Today is the 16th, is Legault saying, society failed. Legault visits Montreal as Quebec becomes the world's 7th deadliest COVID-19 epicenter. These are both National Post articles, okay? So I just think it's funny. Like on one side, they're saying, oh, we've done such a good job at keeping people home. And on the other, society failed. And he's not talking about people staying home. He's talking about packing people in at long-term care homes. I'll clarify that right now. Here we go. Legault took some responsibility for the repeated failures to bring the contagion in Montreal under control, especially within the city's long-term care homes, where the majority of the province's deaths have occurred. But it's Quebecers as a whole, he said, who have let this happen to Montreal. Quebecers as a whole. I think the society failed, he told reporters. There are 3 times more seniors in long-term care homes in Quebec per capita than anywhere else in the world, Legault said. Those centers were underfunded and understaffed for years, he continues, and the people who worked there were underpaid. So, I mean, he wasn't necessarily talking about social distancing, but I think that it's really interesting to have on one side, we were super good at this whole staying home. And then on the other side, society failed by packing our old people into long-term care homes and underfunding and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, how do you solve these problems? How do you effectively fix it, right? I think it's very difficult. I think this one was funny. This is just a headline, and I wanted to mention it. Global News is reporting, this is April 9th, but the gun ban brought this into focus for me. They banned guns for Canadians, but they're selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. I don't understand it. Canada lifts freeze on military exports to Saudi Arabia amid COVID-19 pandemic and uses the pandemic as well to crack down on Canadians' ownership of AR-15 rifles. Right? I mean, a little bit hypocritical there. They're also backing down on single-use plastic ban likely delayed due to pandemic, Environment Minister. Right, it would be very difficult to back a plastics ban when you've got some latex gloves every time you go grocery shopping. Right, yeah. Banned in Canada. Sorry, I can't use that. Do latex gloves count as plastic? I don't know. What about the neoprene gloves? Are those plastic? If they're not plastic, what are they made of? Like latex? But what classification is latex, right? Like, isn't that a kind of plastic? Or is it its own thing? I don't know. But it seems like it would fill up a landfill just as effectively as a little plastic bag, right? Like, I see a plastic bag, I see a latex glove, I see a cow udder, right? Everybody did that in grade school. Okay. Here's another headline only. This is from yesterday too. COVID-19 wage subsidy program extended through August, Trudeau says. How are we going to pay for this? Can we not just open up the economy? How are we going to pay for this? Because it doesn't make any sense to me to continue this especially when you look at the numbers. Can we have some accountability now? No? Right? 12,000 people died of, that's lower respiratory, heart disease, cardiovascular disorder, cardiovascular disease, another 13,000, right? We didn't shut the economy down for that, but we did for this, right? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Air Canada to lay off 20,000 workers amid travel industry collapse, and they're not understating it. It is a collapse. Who's going anywhere? We're trying to book a trip to Newfoundland. Not looking likely. And if we get there, we may have to be quarantined for 2 weeks, even if we're going in August or September, right? That's not iceberg season. This was kind of wild. This is the last story for this morning, 20 minutes long, a little bit long. Okay. American military news is reporting China seems to have infiltrated Canada's highest intelligence agency, and it's not the first time. A potential Chinese spy infiltrated the highest level of Canadian intelligence services, which is part of the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The implications extend far beyond the borders of Canada because of their membership in the Five Eyes intelligence sharing network. In September of this past year, a very senior level Royal Canadian Mounted Police RCMP officer named Cameron Ortis was arrested for a number of charges, including one under the Security Information Law, which is used to prosecute espionage cases. At the time of his arrest, Mr. Ortis was the Director General of the RCMP's National Intelligence Coordination Center. As such, he had almost unlimited access to both Canadian intelligence and large volumes of classified information shared by the Five Eyes allies. Mr. Ortis was also the National Security Advisor for former RCMP Commissioner, a position similar to the FBI Director, Bob Paulson. Paulson served as Commissioner from 2011 to 2017. Some of the charges against Mr. Ortis go back as far as 2015, which means he was likely spying for China from at least 2015 and perhaps much longer. It has been reported that Mr. Ortis was issued technical devices for secret communication, but no one has reported on the significance of this fact. In the trade, a secret communication device would be called a COVCOM or COVCOM, or a covert communication device. Chinese intelligence would not supply this kind of device to Mr. Ortis if they did not consider him to be a fully vetted and a trusted spy. That means he gave them everything he could get his hands on. And I was like, wow. I mean, I'm not surprised. And I remember this article early this year. New charges claim RCMP official intentionally shared operational information back in 2015. According to documents viewed by CBC in the immediate aftermath of his arrest, the classified intelligence material Ortis is accused of preparing to share includes some of the most closely protected of Canada's national security assets, and its dissemination would have threatened Canada's relations with its allies. What's happened since his arrest, everyone? Sources speaking on the condition of anonymity because they're not authorized to talk about the ongoing court case also have said Ortis kept a large number of encrypted computers at his home, making the investigation harder to pursue. Ortis is due back in Ontario's Superior Court on Friday for a judicial pretrial. Interesting, right? So, man, from lockdowns to Chinese spies, the themes of 2020 seem to be tightening up, right? Like it seems to be a very this is gonna be an interesting year. That's certainly been true already, and it's going to remain true. And we're not even halfway done, right? I don't know when the lockdowns are going to end. I don't know when the federal government's going to back down. I don't know when Doug Ford is going to open his cheesecake factory. Did you watch that video? It was fun. I like Doug Ford. His smile is very genuine. I'm glad that it touches his eyes. That's nice to see. But such a weird series of events. And I said this during the SNC Lavalin and Jody Wilson-Raybould and all of that stuff. Any one of these scandals would have unseated conservative government. But these things don't seem to have any kind of effect on Teflon Justin Trudeau. It's very, very strange. And it's so interesting to watch. I don't know that Freeland would enjoy the continued popularity. I don't know that she would. Well, I think maybe we'll see, but I don't know. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and SpeakingMoistly.co. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.